This lesson is on exponent rules and specifically how they apply to fractional exponents. Do you remember your exponent rules? How a to the 0 power is 1. When you're dividing with like bases, you subtract the exponents. When there's a negative exponent, it means that's the notation that tells you to put it in the denominator. You can distribute power, so they would both be a to the n, b to the n. When you have the power of a power, you multiply. When you're multiplying like bases, you can add the exponents. And when you have the power of a fraction, you can distribute that. Now, these rules work for fractions too, so just remember that fractions are numbers too. Here's a new version of an old rule that we had. Here's the old rule. A to the m to the n power, and we multiplied. So an example of that could be a to the 4th to the 3rd would be a to the 12th. Okay, the new version of that rule, because we have fractional exponents now, a to the m over n, we can separate that so that we have 1 over n to the m. Now, an example of that could be x to the 2/5. We can rewrite that as x to the 1/5 squared. When you think about it, all we're doing, this is a new version to the old rule, because if you look at this, this is really multiplication, because 2/5 equals the 1/5 times 2 over 1. And remember in our old rule how we multiplied powers. Well, here we have a power of a power, and so we multiply. Here's what that looks like in a problem. If you had 4 to the 3/2, we could separate that and say 4 to the 1/2 times 3. We know what 4 to the 1/2 is. That is just the square root of 4. So that gives us 2 cubed, which is 8, for our final answer. Another example, 8 to the 2/3. Rewrite that as 8 to the 1/3 squared. 8 to the 1/3 is the same as the cube root of 8. We can square that. The cube root of 8 is 2. And then we square that, which gives us 4. Okay, now you try a few. How did you do? Probably the trickiest one was seeing the difference in these two problems. You have to be careful where you place that negative. Another new version of an old rule is the negative exponent. So you know that from past units that a to the negative n just meant that was the notation that told you to put a to the n in the denominator. The new version of this involves fractions. So if we had a to the negative m over n, so m over n is your fraction, it would look just like this, 1 over a to the mn. An example of this would be x to the negative 2/5 equals 1 over x to the 2/5. Here are a few examples. 9 to the negative 1/2 is the same as 1 over 9 to the 1/2. So that's 1 over 9 squared, so you get 1/3. And you can look at examples 2 and 3. Another more challenging example is number 4. This one is negative 8 to the negative 5/3. We can rewrite this, getting rid of that negative exponent, as 1 over negative 8 to the 5/3. Then we have to use the first rule that we just learned, and that is we're going to split this 5/3 up into 1/3 times 5. So now I have the cube root of negative 8, which is negative 2 to the 5th power. And when I take negative 2 to the 5th power, I get negative 32. Now you try. How did you do? Remember that you can go back and look at these examples again for extra help.